the concept of cream tea, like how did you get people to try it out, or like how do they normally react?
Um, well,
It's like, it doesn't bite. Try it.
I know.
Welcome to Proudly Asian, a podcast series that tells bold and proud stories of Asians by Asians. My name is Isabel, your podcast host, and I'm here to find stories that challenge biases we face every day. There's never just one way to look at Asians. This podcast will take you through a deep dive into the life stories, struggles, and triumphs of young Asians around the world. On today's episode, we have Rose Bakewell, a Korean-American author and the founder of Mrs. Bakewell's, the first and only cream tea company in the US. Born and raised in Virginia, Rose was also chosen as a contestant on the Great American Baking Show. She joins us to talk about growing up in Virginia, her love for all things British, and what really is cream tea. Welcome back to Proudly Asian. Now, by the time this episode is released, it will be just around the corner or just past the annual afternoon tea week in the UK, which essentially celebrates the great British tradition of afternoon tea. And whether or not you have an idea of what an afternoon tea is or cream tea, whether or not you're familiar with the concept, all I can say at this point is just it makes for the perfect summer treat, preferably enjoyed in the garden. And our guest is going to talk about all of that with us in this episode. And personally, I gotta say, cream tea is also part of some of my fondest memories growing up, which is why I'm so excited to be bringing in our guest for this episode, who has introduced the concept of cream tea to America. And without further ado, let's welcome in Rose, who is joining us from Maryland in the US. Welcome to Proudly Asian, Rose. How are you? How's your day going?
Hi, Isabel. Thank you so much for having me today. I know it's been a little hectic.
Yes, we had some of the worst tech issues on both ends, but
yes,
we're here.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's all good. I mean, we're just gonna like get things started before the tech stops working for us again. And well, keeping my fingers crossed. But I mean, I'm so excited to hear all about, like how you decided to bring the concept of cream tea to the US, because as far as I know, you are the only cream tea company in the US, and what makes it even better is Asian owned. So I'm so excited to be getting to know all about your founding story, how you got into, introducing cream tea to the crowd in the States. But before we get started with all of that, why don't you tell us about who you are, what you are, and where you grew up?
Well, my name is Rose, and I am a Korean American, born and raised in Northern Virginia.
Amazing. So, I mean, I have never been to Virginia myself, and I'm so curious about like what it was like growing up Asian in Virginia. Like growing up, was there kind of like a significant Asian community, or were you always the only Asian around? What was breakfast like for you? Tell us all about it.
I think there were probably like 3 other Asians in our school growing up. It was predominantly Caucasians. But I grew up in Lorton, Virginia. And although there were some suburban neighborhoods in that area, it was quite pastoral and very country where I lived. And my parents had a good amount of land. So there were lots of open fields, as well as wooded areas. And we had expansive gardens and lots of trees and chickens and rabbits and, cats, dogs, you name it. So, although I'm a suburbanite now, I'm sort of a country girl at heart. And this environment sort of instilled in me a love for nature. And
Oh, wow. It
yeah,
sounds like a beautiful place that you grew up in.
it's really beautiful. I think that's why I love the country so much. It's not like that now over there. It's very developed now. But for breakfast, you would, some would expect me to say soup and rice. But we actually never really ate breakfast. My parents were very hard workers, and they had their own business, and they would still be asleep when my brother and I would catch the school bus. And but I do remember on very rare occasions, my mom would make us porridge with eggs and bacon, and I make that quite a bit for my children now. But
Nice.
yeah, not a very Korean breakfast.
Mm-hmm. And if you don't mind me asking, like, was there a thinking or like, how did your family somehow ended up in Virginia, of all the places in America?
Right. Well, my grandparents came in, I want to say late 60s,
Wow.
early 70s. And they first, when they first arrived in America, they went to Washington, D.C. And then they moved to Virginia, to Falls Church, Virginia. And my grandfather purchased a plot of land in Lorton, and my mom purchased the land from him, and then we built a house there. My grandfather built our house there. It was amazing. And that's the house we grew up in. And we were the big, scary White House on the street. So I don't know how he wound up there, but we were just Fairfax County, Virginia. That's where we grew up.
That's amazing. Wow. And I mean, I know that now you have sort of developed a career, of baking. Like, did you bake much growing up?
Not at all. Asians don't really, I can't say that for all Asians, but they never really baked. If you look at, Korean desserts, there are tons, but back in the day, it's like rice cakes. That's dessert, right? Like it's just, there wasn't much baking at all. So although my grandparents, my grandmothers and my mother, they're amazing cooks, never baked a day in their lives. So it was just all self-taught. I just really liked baking. And
wow.
yeah.
So when did it start? Like, when did you suddenly discover, oh, this art of baking is something that you were into?
Right. I loved, home ec. I was in home ec in school, and we did some baking there. But I joined home ec because I liked baking, or the concept of it, or the idea of it, really. And because I never really got to bake. And when I was a teenager, I didn't know that cakes were made from scratch. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I thought they all came out of like box mixes, like cake mixes, and I didn't know that you can just throw some flour and sugar and eggs and milk together and make a cake. And so when my children were younger, they had food allergies, and I really didn't want them to miss out on birthday cakes and things like that. So I was experimenting with how to make vegan cakes, something safe for them to eat. And so that's when I really started baking from scratch. Other than at home ec. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So, I mean, like, I could relate to that because I mean, I had no idea cakes had to be baked. And I honestly just thought like bread just came from nowhere. I mean, I don't know. Like, as a kid, I would probably think bread just like grew out of a tree or something like that. And then
Right, right.
even to this day, I still haven't cracked the science of like how bread can be made. But I mean, it's still
Oh, it's
magic to
yes,
me.
yes.
Yeah. So it's just like anyone who knows how to bake and who bakes well, like I have so much respect for them. And you are one of them because
Oh,
obviously I had the pleasure of trying out one of the boxes of the cream tea that you made, and you so kindly sent one box to me. And when I had my first bite, I was just like, wow, this is as good as like a freshly baked scone, which is something that
oh,
we're
that's
going to
so
get into very soon. Yeah, but it was
sweet.
lovely. It was so delightful. So thank you very
Oh,
much.
thank you so much for trying it. I'm so glad. I'm so glad that you
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
It was kind of like a bizarre, like an odd feeling that, whoa, like I have like cream tea in the States because like I had
In
it
the
when I was
States?
in, yeah, like I had it in the States. I never really thought that I would be having that in the States. So it was such an odd feeling and it was so good. Like it was probably one of the best cream tea that I've had. So, I
Oh,
mean,
you just made my
oh,
day. Thank you. But do you still have it in? Well, you traveled to Hong Kong, right? So
yeah.
do you have it there?
Yes, it's actually everywhere. Like afternoon tea and cream tea is kind of like
Oh,
a common like item in Hong Kong, you know, like for some of the fine dining restaurants and hotels. But I gotta say, not every hotel has nailed making scones.
it's different everywhere, right?
It is, yeah. Like, so some of them, I feel like they just make it for the sake of like having it because it's such a staple. Like, good scones are so hard to come by, I have to admit. So, like, when I opened your box, I was so pleasantly surprised. I mean, obviously, we talked quite a bit about your cream tea, but I want to like go back a little bit just to like get to know more about like where your interest in all things British comes from because like you're sort of like a self-proclaimed Anglophile as well.
Yes, yes. And I often get asked that question a lot. so so to be honest, I don't have a straightforward answer. I have a deep affection for the English countryside, and I cherish many fond memories from my time in Lorton. Just hiding under the willow tree or eating apples and cherries straight off the branches, and um, we had a neighbor named Miss Marjorie who ran a fantastic flower stand, and I would just sit in her gazebo and play with her beagle Molly, and I think when I read books or see paintings that capture a very British tradition, such as a countryside picnic or a serene garden party, I'm sort of overcome with a profound sense of familiarity and comfort. And I think it's just oddly intertwined like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because you see lots of photos of the English countryside and that lifestyle, and that's kind of how I grew up. And so yeah, there's an odd connection. There's this connection somewhere in there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, just from what you described, you know, like the place that you grew up, I could already like imagine it being a set for, you know, like something that comes out of like Jane Austen's novels. That's what it sounded like to me.
It was lovely. It was really nice growing up in Lorne, and I want to go back so badly. But it's just
Yeah.
not there anymore. Yeah, it's not the same.
No.
No, it's not
I
the
was
same.
about to say, like, you got me so curious about that place that I want to visit myself, but now you're
Yeah,
saying it's not the same.
no,
So I was like,
there are
why?
homes everywhere. Yes, it's developed. There's large shopping centers, and it's just become,
Hmm. Now, I mean, like moving on to talk more about, your company, Mrs. Bakewell's. Obviously, you took your passion for British food and all things British culture up a notch by starting your own cream tea company. And it's, like I mentioned earlier, it's the first and the only one in the US. So for our listeners who are not from the UK or not familiar with what cream tea or afternoon tea and everything relate to that, like, could you give our listeners a brief overview of what cream tea is as an expert yourself?
Absolutely. Cream tea is a simpler version of afternoon tea, where it consists of scones, clotted cream, jam, and tea. Because afternoon tea consists of, finger sandwiches and mini cakes and pastries, scones with clotted cream and jam, and cream tea is just the scone part, just the scones and clotted cream and jam.
I mean, it's my favorite snack after school growing up. And I don't know about like you, but then it's like for me, my favorite part of cream tea is the clotted cream part. Like, what's your favorite part? Like, or would you say like all of it?
I think all of it. But I actually really like thunder and lightning. So traditionally it would be clotted cream and treacle, but I really love it with golden syrup. And I guess they have golden syrup in the supermarket, some markets around here. But I guess the closest would be like a maple syrup. But it's not even, or you could do honey. I think honey would probably be the closest to golden syrup, just the thickness of it. It's so good.
So it's like the texture will be sort of like runny, right?
Yes. And it's amazing. So that's really, you just eat that by yourself, alone, away from company, because it gets messy.
Right. Wow. I never really thought of that. Now I'm intrigued.
It's very good. Yeah.
Yeah, because like when I was young, like whenever I was like having cream tea by myself, like if anyone left me alone with like all the cream tea or like the whole jar of clotted cream, I would just like keep on piling on a lot of clotted cream. And I would always describe it as like I would need a tower of clotted cream to go with my cream tea.
And I think in the States, when I see people eating it, they actually just put a very light smear of. Oh. They kind of use it like butter, and it's not butter. Right. You really do need to pile on that clotted cream for that full experience. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just so curious because I mean, obviously, cream tea is not or maybe I'm just assuming cream tea is not a very familiar concept for a lot of like regular Americans, right? So when you first introduced the concept of cream tea, like how did you get people to try it out, or like how do they normally react?
Well,
it's like it doesn't bite. Try it.
I know, and many Americans are unfamiliar with cream tea. Sometimes wonder if it involves putting cream directly into tea, and it's never cream, it's milk. But reactions have been overwhelmingly positive. Knock on wood. I'm so grateful that people have been so kind, and also, we live in America. We have a lot of people from other countries who live here, and my English customers find it nostalgic, while those who visited England appreciate the reminder of their travels. And of course, Anglophiles and fans of shows like The Crown and Bridgerton and Downton Abbey, of course, they also enjoy the experience because they feel, it's like that feeling. They have a connection to their favorite British shows. So that's really it's also really nice to be able to offer that to people who've never had it before.
Amazing. Cream tea is always a good idea once you try it. And I mean, just out of curiosity, like what was the whole founding story of Mrs. Bakewell's? Like, how did you decide that, right, I'm going to make a company out of cream tea? You know, what was it something that you've always planned to do, or was it also like a beautiful and delicious accident?
Oh, well, oh gosh, it's long, so I'm gonna try to shorten it, but it's a long
We have got
story.
time.
Well, it was a beautiful accident. Suffice it to say, I love having people over for tea, having tea parties, and I just love to bake for people in general. And I find there's always an excuse to bake for someone, whether it's, to thank them, or they're not feeling well, and holidays. And so for Christmas one year, I made some clotted cream at home because you couldn't find clotted cream here in the States. So I made clotted cream, and that's a very long process. You have to, first you have to find cream that's not ultra pasteurized, because all the cream is ultra pasteurized in the stores, and then you have to bake it for 12 hours, and they have to let it set for 12 hours, and it's a long process. So I made some scones and clotted cream, and made some jam, and put them into little wicker baskets, and just distributed them to people, like scout leaders and family, teachers, things like that. And they really liked it, and it sort of became a tradition. And I don't know if I was chosen to be a contestant on Great American Baking Show, but I actually wasn't able to compete. I did all my recipes, and I went to England, and the day before filming, the day before we went into the tent, I had an emergency, and I had to come back to the States. So I had to sadly drop out because I had to come back here. And so when I came back, I was so distraught that I just sort of threw myself into, just focused on my children's books that I was writing at the time. And my first book was Lottie and the Tea Party. And it was particularly timely since my daughter was deeply enamored with tea parties at the time. So, I modeled the characters to reflect my family, and, dedicated substantial effort to perfect my scone recipe because I wanted it to work for everyone who made it, and especially children and new bakers. And then during that time, I was trying to actually launch a different business, and I made these stuffed rolls for my children all the time. And other than the fact that there was a manager at Whole Foods who wanted to carry it, other than that, nothing was going right. I mean, I couldn't find a co-packer. I couldn't come up with a logo. It was just sort of a disaster. So then I really had to just really think about what I truly wanted to do. Because I had, scones and like British desserts. I was like, I'm going to do that later on. But then I was like, why not do it now? Like, what's stopping me from doing it now? So just once I started focusing on that, I had to pivot, and everything fell into place. Everything fell into place. I was like, okay, this is what I need to do. And so in the future, so sticky toffee pudding, Victoria sandwiches, all of that, it's going to be part of the line, our line here. But so I just, ultimately this journey sort of brought me back to my roots of gifting little cream tea baskets. So now not only can people enjoy cream tea in the comfort of their own home, but they can also send cream tea boxes as gifts to loved ones nationwide. So
wow, what a beautiful accident, as you would describe it. And I also have like so much respect for all the attention to detail that went into your cream tea, because like when I received the box, first of all, what I noticed was that cooler bag was so beautiful. I was like I was like, I'm keeping it.
Oh.
It's gonna come with me wherever I go for my next picnic, my next day
I love
trip.
that.
And then after opening the cooler bag, first of all, the paper box is pink. It's so cute, so lovely, and I actually still keep the box around. I mean, everything's just so beautiful, and then it came with the content inside. And I gotta say, like, you even made the effort to create the bags that would fit all the scones perfectly. You thought out everything. So can you tell me? I'm just so curious because, like, when everything fits so perfectly, it's just like, as a kind of like a mini perfectionist myself, I'm just like, whoa, this is like so nicely done. So I just want to know, like, all the thoughts that went into designing the packaging as well.
Well, Isabel, you would have not wanted to be around when I was doing that.
How many all-nighters did you pull?
My children could tell you I'm just manic, just absolutely mad when it comes to packaging and, just bringing my ideas to fruition. It is not pretty at all. It's very chaotic, and because I do want it to be perfect, and I was just thinking in terms of when I receive packages, I really don't like having to rifle through all of that confetti paper that you have to end up cleaning up, and styrofoam. I really don't like styrofoam. And just excess packaging materials. It's overwhelming. So, but I carry glass in my boxes, in the cream tea boxes, right? The jam and the cream, and I didn't want that to shatter during transit, and so I had to sort of come up with a way to configure it in the box where everything fit perfectly. The scones didn't crush from the weight of the jars, and the jars didn't shatter. And but I didn't want the excess the little foam material and confetti. So just a lot of measuring, a lot of trial and error, and yeah. And
I could tell how much work went into that packaging when I opened it.
Environmentally friendly, that what was on my mind a lot too, because I that's why a lot of it is paper, and everything is reusable, recyclable, so.
That's amazing. And you ship nationwide as well. So like during the summer months, you have to like sort of figure out the challenge of the heat and how to get it like fresh, across to the other side of the States. Yeah. So, I mean, so much respect for you. And I mean, before we move on to the next segment, I just have a couple more, questions for you regarding cream tea. I mean, obviously for our listeners who might not be so familiar with like cream tea, there's always this age-old debate between like how you should be having your cream tea, and namely, there are two ways: the Devon way and the Cornish way. So, Rose, like, which way would you prefer?
You're trying to start a war here, Isabel. You're trying to...
I mean, first of all, I'll end the war by saying I do both.
Yes. Just don't sandwich it. Don't make a scone burger, because that's what I see a lot of people doing.
Oh my God.
And
it's a no.
No. So I'm Cornish all the way. I do jam. And then cream.
Mm-hmm. Just how the Queen liked it, right?
Yes, exactly. And who are we to argue with the Queen, right?
I know, but I'm rebellious, so I do the Devon way sometimes.
I don't know. I want to hit that cream first.
I mean, like my thinking around the Devon way is that like if you put the cream first, it will sort of like hold the jam in place, because the jam could be a little bit like sloppy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
you're supposed to eat scones warm, right? And if you put the cream on, it just sort of melts into the scone. And
I can see that. Yeah.
Right. So we need like a barrier of jam.
But I mean, yeah, definitely that is a debate. So for our listeners, do let us know like which way you prefer and why.
Right.
And I mean, obviously, other than like the burger way of eating scones, it's a big no-no. Are there any other like etiquette or rules that people should be aware of whenever they're having their afternoon tea or cream tea?
Yes, some basic etiquette rules would be to hold your teacup by the handle, pinkies down, always down. Don't ever pick it up. I don't know where that came from, where people thought that, they need to pick their pinkies. Stir your tea 12 to 6, not round in circles, because you'll splash everywhere. And then you place your spoon on your saucer. And really just keeping conversations light without the mention of religion, politics, because those subjects could make some people uncomfortable, and tea time should be about enjoying each other's company and ensuring respect and appreciation for that moment shared together.
I love it. It seems like that etiquette should be applied to a lot of conversations and non-afternoon tea related situations these days too.
Yes,
But I love it. Thank you so much for running us through, the idea, the concept of cream tea, and most importantly, bringing the beautiful concept of afternoon tea and cream tea to the wider audience in the US. But now it's time for us to move on to the next segment, which is called Rapid Fires. And in this segment, I'll be asking Rose some biased question that she's got asked at some points in life. So, Rose, are you ready for all the questions that are coming your way?
Yes.
All right, let's go. First question. Do you speak Chinese?
No, I am fluent in Korean. That includes reading and writing. Nice.
And the second question is, why do you make English food, not Asian?
Yes. Well, my mother's an amazing cook, and I just don't want to compete with her. No, I feel
that makes sense.
No, isn't bound by nationality. Just as many chefs create dishes outside their heritage. I just thought to bring an authentic taste of British food to people in my life.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, because I mean, some of the best cooks for Asian cuisines, they are not Asian also. So I think we should allow for that diversity in the culinary world.
Yes.
And next question. I assume you get this a lot. Is Bakewell your legal name?
I get that a lot. And yes, Bakewell is a part of my very long legal name.
It's meant to be. And the next question is also related to your name. Is your name Bakewell because you bake well?
No. And I get...
Oh dear.
Bakewell is the name of a charming little town in Derbyshire, England. So no, it's not, because it has nothing to do with baking at all.
But I mean, there's also the added fact that you do bake well.
Oh my goodness.
You've made it to the last question, Rose. Why are you so obsessed with the English?
I get that a lot too, and I think it's rather I have a strong appreciation and deep respect of the English culture that brings me comfort and happiness. Just as some people find solace in, Italian furniture, or appreciate the craftsmanship of French luxury brands, right? I find a sense of tranquility and admiration in the English countryside, and their traditions and their way of life. And I think it's only natural to have a certain level of fascination for things that bring you joy and familiarity.
And now you bring people joy by delivering your cream tea nationwide. So I mean, it's It's such a beautiful way to celebrate what you love. So thank you so much for answering all the questions in this rapid bias segment, Rose. And for us to wrap up the episode, I'm just so curious, like, what's next for Mrs. Bakewell's, and what are some of the beautiful creations that will be coming out of your company? And also, if our listeners are interested in ordering a box of cream tea for themselves or their loved ones, where can they find you?
Well, at mrsbakewells.com. And I'm not, to stay connected and see our latest updates. Although I'm not very active on social media, we can be found on Instagram, and you can sign up for a newsletter on our website. But to answer your first question, at Mrs. Bakewell's, we cherish timeless charm of classic, tradition and simplicity. And my aim is to stay true to classic elegance and consistency. And just looking ahead, I envision expanding our range to include not just cream tea boxes, but also afternoon tea boxes featuring finger sandwiches and cakes. And I'm doing some trial runs right now just to see how they'll ship. I'm shipping them to people to test it out, and they're arriving, knock on wood, in good condition so far. But yeah, I really want to add, Victoria sandwiches and sticky toffee pudding, because I don't think a lot of people in the States have tried it, and I think they'll be blown away by how amazing English food can be, because, they kind of have a bad rap for, having bland foods, right? But it's not,
Yes.
it's really, it can be very, very, very delicious. So
Yes.
I want everyone to be able to try it.
Yes, I must agree that's the better part of the British cuisine. And yes. And for us to leave this episode, I just have one last question for you, Rose. To you, what does it mean to be proudly Asian?
I think it's really to just encompass who you are and your heritage without feeling ashamed or embarrassed, because, growing up, a lot of the times you look around and you're kind of the outsider, right? Because, you're not like everyone. Sorry, I'm kind of, yeah. And you wonder why, like, you don't have a name like, that's American. Well, now I have, a very Americanized name, but growing up, you speak another language, and because Korean was actually my first language, even though I was born and raised here, because my family spoke Korean, and I was sort of thrown into school without speaking a lick of English. And so now that I'm older, I really do appreciate, being Asian and having the qualities of Asian people who are generally just very, respectful and kind. And I'm really proud of that, we don't really have to try hard to be, respectful of others.
I get a little emotional hearing like your response to this question as well, because I think like a lot of guests actually get a little emotional when they are kind of like looking back at their childhood, what they went through, the journey that they had to come through. Because like for a lot of like Asians, we have gone through a lot of like experience being sort of like the minority in a lot of different situations, in a lot of different countries as well. And like growing up being the minority, it means taking a lot of time and effort effort to try to find who we are, because when we look around, we don't really see a role model or like an example to show us like how to be us. And then it would take a lot of like courage to eventually like find our footing and find, like who we are, and also even more courage to be who we are. So that was such a beautiful response, Rose. And I really admire you for, like creating all these beautiful creations and sending delicious, joyful boxes all across the US. And I hope one day somehow you will be able to expand and ship it to places other than the US.
I get a lot of messages through Instagram asking if I ship to oh my goodness, Australia, France, Italy, you name it, and England too. And I was like, you guys have green tea there.
This shows how bleak the food scene is in the UK. But thank you so much for telling us, what cream tea is, your story, and sharing your time with us on this episode, Rose.
Thank you so much for having me, Isabel. I really appreciate it.
That's it for this episode of Proudly Asian. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at proudly.asian for more content. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Leave us a 5-star review on wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in and signing off for now. I'm Isabel Wong.